Hi guys, let's practice seeing how many significant figures or SigFigs we can find in the following numbers. So I'm just going to run through lots of examples. I'll explain each one to you. What you want to do is you want to pause the tutorial before I tell you what the answer is so that you can check to see if you could have gotten it on your own. So how many SigFigs do you think are in this number? Pause and check. The correct answer is 4. That's because the 9 and the 4 are significant because neither one of them is a 0, so they're automatically significant. And the 2 zeros are significant because they are trapped zeros. Trapped zeros are between numbers, they're always significant. Notice how it doesn't matter which side of the decimal point that 0 is on. They're still considered trapped zeros because they're between numbers. Let's try another one. Okay, let's try this one. Lots of zeros. What do you think? Check it, pause it, and check. Okay, so in this one, we actually have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 significant digits. Why are those zeros all significant but not this one? Well, that one is what we call a leading zero. The leading zero comes before any numbers. It doesn't matter if it's before or after a decimal, only if it's before any numbers. Leading zeros are never significant. The 3 and the 1 are both significant because, well, they're not zeros. The trapped zeros are significant because, well, trapped zeros always are significant. And the trailing zero is significant because there's a decimal in the number. As soon as you put a decimal in your number, all trailing zeros automatically become significant. Okay, let's try another one. Okay, this one seems pretty easy. How many significant digits do you see? Pause and check. There's 1. Wait a minute, you say. How can there only be 1? Well, the 7 you know is significant. And what about those zeros? Well, they're trailing zeros, but there's no decimal. So if there's no decimal, trailing zeros are never significant. Basically what we're saying is, I don't know if we measured those zeros. I can't just chop them off and call this number a 7. There's a big difference between the number 7 and the number 700. So I need those zeros to hold the place, but they don't mean anything. I don't know if I measured them or not. Okay, let's try another one. Okay, how many SigFigs do you see here? Pause it. Okay. So, what do you think? Tricky, very tricky. Okay, here's the tricky part. This guy is a leading zero. He comes before any numbers. Doesn't matter that he comes after the decimal. He comes before any numbers. He doesn't count. But the 3 and the 1 count because they're not zeros. And the trailing zero counts because look, there's a decimal. Those are confusing. When you have both leading and trailing zeros, you have a tendency to want to treat them the same way, but they're not the same. Leading zeros never count, trailing zeros count only if there's a decimal on the page. Let's try another one. Okay, how many SigFigs? Pause it. There's actually 5. All of these zeros are significant. See if you can figure out why. Why are they all significant? Well, they're significant because even though they're all trailing zeros, what do you see on the page? A decimal. And of course the 4 is always significant because it's not a 0. Trailing zeros, whether they come before or after a decimal, doesn't matter. It has to do with whether or not they come before or after numbers. These zeros come after all the numbers. They are all trailing zeros and they're all significant because we put that decimal point there. Without the decimal point, they're not significant anymore. Let's try another one. Okay, how many SigFigs? Pause it. Okay, ready to check? All right, this has 3. The 1, the 4, and the 5. All those zeros, trailing zeros, no decimal, they don't count. They're important, you have to write them. You can't change 145,000 to 145, not without changing everything about that number. We have to write them there, but we're just saying, when we say they're not significant, we're just saying, hey, we don't know whether or not we measured out that far. All we know is that there could be a 0 there, there could be other numbers there, we're not really sure. We didn't have a measuring tool that went out that far. Let's try another one. Okay, check this one. How many significant figures? Pause it. This one's tricky. There's 3. Look, the 3 and the 3 you know are significant because they're not zeros, right? This 0 is significant because he's trapped between 2 digits. But the trailing 0, no decimal, no dice. He does not count as significant. So again, it's not that that zero is not important, it's that we don't know whether or not we actually measured the ones place. We measured every other place, but we don't know what was in the ones place. It might be a zero, it might be some other number. Okay, let's try a few more. Okay, really think about this one. Pause it and think about it. Which of those zeros are significant? You ready? All right, let's do them one at a time. How about this first zero? Is this zero at the beginning significant? He's a leading zero. Leading zeros are never significant. Numbers that are not zeros are significant. What about this zero between the two threes? He's trapped. He counts. The 3 always counts. What about the zero at the end, a trailing zero? When are trailing zeros significant? When there's a decimal on the page. So I say there are 4 sig figs in this number. Okay, let's try another one. How many sig figs? Pause it and check. Well, you know that the 4 and the 5 are significant. What about those zeros? I don't see a decimal, do you? That means not significant. They're important. You need to write them there. Otherwise, this would be a 45 and not a 4500. But we don't know if we actually measured the tens and the ones place with our measuring device. So we only have 2 sig figs in this number. Let's try one more. Okay, here we go. How many sig figs? Pause it and count them up. Okay, how many did you get? Let's go through them one at a time. The 1 is significant because he's not a zero. The 0 is significant because he's trapped. The 9 is significant because he's not a zero. These zeros are significant because they're trapped. The 5 is not a zero. The 1 is not a zero. What about that trailing 0? Look, here's the decimal. He counts. So let's count those up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 significant digits. Hopefully that little tutorial helped you practice enough that you're starting to feel confident. You can try out some of the tools that I give you in class for practicing more if you really need to. When you're ready, you want to take part 1 of the self quiz. See you in class.